Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often. He'll wipe my tears. Only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember.
Hi, welcome back to the Messages Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experiences. And today we got Mike H, also my co-host. And today we're going to be getting into Mike's story. We're going to talk about what his childhood was like, what happened is an addiction, and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So, Mike, how are you doing today, bro?
I'm doing great. How are you, bro?
I'm fantastic. I feel really good, energetic.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
All right. So, what was it like for you growing up?
So I've put a little bit of thought into this question, and one of my earliest memories that I have in my life is I don't know how old I was. I think maybe 4 or 5, and there were cops there, and my mom was there, and she was crying, and we left with the cops. You know, I later found out and was told that my parents had gotten busted for trafficking narcotics across state lines. And I don't really remember much of the time I was away from my mom, a few bits and pieces, but I do remember when she got us back. And it wasn't very long. She didn't have a record and my dad has an extensive record.
Right.
So when they got busted, he got 7 years or something like that, and she got like a year, maybe a year with half or something like that. So as soon as she got out, she got busy getting us back right away.
Right.
And we were living right here in San Bernardino, and she went to a program right here in San Bernardino, and I remember when she got us back, and she threw herself all into recovery, man. Like, she went through a treatment center right here in town. It's still there. I remember at a young age, our first Christmas was in these apartments in San Bernardino, and I only know this because she told me later, but like that first Christmas, she didn't have anything to give us,
Right.
And a nonprofit organization that somebody in the program had contacted on behalf of my mom showed up on Christmas Day with armfuls of gifts.
Yeah.
And so that's all thanks to the program that she was working.
Right.
And after that,
So how old were you when your mom got clean?
the first time, 5 years old.
Okay.
It was before kindergarten,
Okay.
so I was very young.
All right.
And right away I was always around people in recovery. I was always in meetings. I was that little rugrat running around, spilling people's coffee, and I remember too, like my mom would always take me and my little brother around and like show us off, like look how handsome my sons are, and it was an interesting experience growing up in the rooms, and but there was one thing I always felt different, as soon as I started school, I remember thinking that like all these kids I went to school with, they didn't look like me.
Right.
They didn't. By appearance, I did look different. The schools that I went to, I was the minority race in those schools,
Right.
if you can believe it. And so at a very young age, I remember feeling different. And I always had this thing in my mind like that everyone else had this Brady Bunch family.
Right.
And that I only had one parent, and I just thought that everyone else didn't have to go through that at a very young age, And I always felt different. So in those same apartments that I grew up in, there was a lot of people in recovery in these apartments. These apartments were kind of known for that.
Right.
And she ended up getting in a relationship with somebody else in the program.
Okay.
And I remember, us kind of merging families. He had a son. My mom had 2 sons. We were all in recovery. Like they were all in recovery, and we did recovery events. But I remember having a resentment right out of the gate with this guy because he wasn't my dad.
Right.
I didn't know why my dad wasn't there. I felt like he didn't love me. because my mom was there, she came right back. And as a child, I didn't understand that.
Right.
So, things progressively got better. We moved out of those apartments. We moved into a home. He worked hard and to provide for us, and my mom always worked very hard to provide for us. And my mom was always in school and always bettering herself and staying in recovery. I remember having like sponsorship sister meetups in my living room. Like I stayed in my room because they were doing all these women in recovery were doing things in the living room and like in the book and like working steps in my house, and I didn't really understand that at that time. Another thing I remember from my childhood is, and from the meetings particularly, is hearing war stories of people at speaker meetings.
Right.
And that became my idea of what an addict was. The worst of their stories was what I was burned into my brain is what a drug addict was.
Right.
And that holding on to that belief kept me sick a long time. Because there was things that I heard that I told myself, like, I'm not an addict. I didn't do that.
Right.
I'm not an addict because I didn't, slam puddle water or whatever until I did. And then by then it was far too late.
Right. And what's funny is I used to go to meetings when I was a kid too, right? And I used to be that little kid that was like eating hot Cheetos, like a big ass family bag, what I'm saying, with my sisters and like running around. And I don't remember a lot of stories, but I remember thinking it was weird because I would go with my dad, right? And I would see my dad hug other men, and I was this is weird, bro. Like we don't, what I'm saying? I think hugging is more common now, even in like male relationships outside of recovery.
Yeah.
But back then, nobody hugged.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it was like a super weird thing. And I remember I didn't understand what was going on, but I know sometimes they had donuts, and I was cool with that, bro. Donuts and hot Cheetos. And
I remember the cake. There was one meeting we always went to, always had cake, so I was always down to And it's funny that you said talk about the hugs now, because I'll approach people that are not in the program.
Yeah.
And I'll go in and catch myself going in for a hug, and they're like, "What are you doing?"
Right.
Like, I'm at work and like about to go, go in for a hug, and they're just like, "Whoa."
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's what we do, and I love hugs now.
Yeah.
Right, I'm that weird guy that hugs everybody. So
For far too long.
For far too long. All right, bro. So you we're into this program. So I know you said that the first time your mom got clean.
Yeah.
Right. So the first time your mom got clean, you were 5.
Yeah.
What happened? Did she relapse? Obviously, right?
Yeah. So through the course of having this merged family, they were both recovering addicts, and I'm not going to go into what happened, but
Of course.
there was some turmoil in the house
Yeah.
between them two, and they both ended up going out. And by this time, I was 14 or 15. I had already experienced alcohol.
Right.
I felt the effects of alcohol, and I did like it.
Okay.
I'd felt relief from all of this mental anguish that I put on myself as a kid, and I liked the way it made me feel.
Okay.
And I liked the way it made me not feel. So
How old were you when you first had your first drink?
I was 15, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you smoke any weed or anything like that before then?
No.
Okay.
It's alcohol first.
All right. So your first use ever was at the age of 15.
Yeah.
All right.
And it was kind of weird, too, because I was working at a gas station on Del Rosa, like a very rough gas station.
Yeah.
I was 15 years old, and they had a mechanic shop there.
Yeah.
And this guy, he must have been, like 30s, maybe 40. And I can look at it now, and I know it's weird, but at the time, I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So, he invited me to go over to his house and, have some beers. Mm-hmm. And I did, and, luckily nothing weird happened. But I went home from going there, and I think I might have had 4 Bud Lights or something.
Yeah.
Like I was pretty wasted for
Yeah, of course.
15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I go home and I go in my bathroom and I look in the mirror and it's the first time I looked in the mirror and I just could smile at myself. You know, I liked that I felt like myself. I felt comfortable. I didn't have this like uncomfortable feeling in me, like I was different for once.
Right.
Yeah. So shortly after that is when they ended up splitting up and ended up relapsing. And I remember I continued to work. I didn't really get carried away with the drugs and alcohol. I did drink, and I did start smoking weed about that time. But I did it really late at night because I didn't want my brother to go with me.
Got you.
You know, so I would take off. And at this point, like I'm driving already. I'm like 15, 16 years old. And
Okay.
And I would take off and I'd go drink and smoke with my friends. And then I'd come back and it wasn't out of hand, but it was starting to be a regular thing at that point.
Okay.
And then that lasted for about a year. I continued to work at that gas station. I started to not care about school so much. I figured like I'm grown, I'm working, you know, like
Right.
I have a car and, you know, I don't need school, you know? And so at some point during that that year that my mom was on her relapse, somebody from the program took us in, me and my brother, and we started living there. And then, you know, I just started smoking weed there because her son, who I called him my cousin, because my mom and her, I believe, were sponsee sisters, so we called each other cousins.
Got you.
You know, so you know, we started smoking weed and it continued to progress, and then my mom went to treatment and got clean and got out and started working a program again. And I remember I could manipulate a situation even at that point in time,
Right.
or I could justify anything. I could justify my actions. Even back then, even before I ever started using, you know,
Right.
I had those processes like of thought in my head, like that I was gonna like make the situation work for me. So as soon as she came back around and we got another place and so there was some stability back in the home, you know, I just told myself right then and there, like, it's my turn. Like, it's my turn to party.
Right.
And I use that as an excuse to, you know, fully dive into addiction.
Okay.
You know? And shortly after, I was drinking heavily. I was smoking weed. And shortly after that, I started smoking meth.
Okay. How old were you when you started smoking meth?
On a daily basis, I was 20
Okay.
or 21.
All right.
Yeah. I had done it before, like done a couple lines here and there.
Right.
But the smoking is really what got me. You know, the whole ritual of smoking meth
Yeah.
is what really grabbed a hold of me. I suddenly didn't have a drinking problem no more. I couldn't hold down a beer. I didn't even want to finish a beer as soon as I picked that up.
Yeah.
I just traded one for
another.
the next.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, it went like that. And it was just like these things are introduced to you, and like I feel like these are experiences that every person probably has,
Right.
as far as like experimenting and trying new things. But like the effect that it had on me was different.
Right.
You know, I liked the way it made me feel, and like I wanted to do more of it immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just became a daily thing, you know. And right away, like I couldn't do anything. Like right before I started doing meth, I got my first DUI, and I figured, I told myself like, all right, I'm going to jail now. That's what I'm doing, you know.
Yeah.
And I lost a vehicle as a result of my drunk driving, and you know, I just didn't put much thought into like the future at that point. Like all that mattered was like right now, like the next one.
Right.
So yeah, and it you know, I think I probably did meth for a couple of years, and somehow held a job, kind of, at that same gas station, and I started working nights. And working nights and smoking meth go hand in hand.
That's perfect. That's a perfect combination.
Perfect fit for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It makes fun it makes work even fun, bro. Right?
Yeah. Everyone was an interesting person. Like I'd get it from homeless people. And it was in the beginning when it was fun.
Yep.
At the beginning, it is.
Yeah, of course. And I think some people have a hard time saying that, but it's like, if it wasn't fun, then why would I do it again? Yeah. Right? There's a part where getting loaded, right? Whether it's alcohol, weed, meth, whatever, right? Whatever we try, at one point it's fun. Yeah. At one point it does something for us, right? Until it doesn't anymore, Yeah. And I wanted to touch on what you said is like, because I think about like my middle school years, right? I had a bunch of friends, bro, that smoked pot every day with me, right? But not all of them turned out to be like me.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's what, I wouldn't say makes me different, but separates me from other people, right? For other people, they might have just been having fun, but at a young age, I was masking something, right? And you talked about like being in that mirror for the first time drunk and like being okay with who you were looking at. And that's what I know I've been looking for since I was a kid, because I always felt indifferent, always felt separate, wasn't the same as everybody else, right?
Yeah. It was relief.
It was.
I realize that now,
Yeah.
What actually happened that day was just like this huge weight lifted off me that I carried around and didn't know what it was until it was gone.
Right.
So, it continued to get worse. I continued to do stupid things to fund my habits, especially when you're up all night, and it just leads to like doing whatever it takes to get the next one.
Right.
And I think I was like in my early 20s when I started. I looked at prescription pills as an opportunity to like make money to fund my meth habit, and then I started taking them.
Right.
And I still didn't see it as a problem. I had been in multiple just toxic drug-fueled relationships at this point, and that was the basis for the relationship. Like, we do the same drugs, so like, let's be together.
Right.
And that was it, And I also realized like that in every single one of those relationships, it was transactional. Like I was only down for it if like there was something for me to gain from being there.
Right.
Whether it was like she had a vehicle or she had like a grandma that had a pill prescription that she would sell me or whatever it was, like I was always looking for some way to get more out of the deal than the other person. And that was the addict in me. Just like, I didn't realize it then, but I can look back at it now and that's what it was, So I kept taking the pills and kept on in my addiction, kept going to jail, got a house raided. That didn't steer me away from using. As soon as I got out, that's exactly what I did. Right when I got out.
Right.
And I didn't see anything wrong with it, And the people that I hung around with, they didn't see anything wrong with it either. They had been doing it, and I admired it almost.
Right.
Like it was just a part of the show. So I remember one time I got out of jail after getting raided, and they took all my pills. And I get out and I'm dope sick, and a friend of mine came over, and like I knew that he had used to do pills, but he quit asking me for them. And I knew he didn't quit using, but he quit asking me for pills.
Right.
And so he pulled out a foil with some heroin on it, and I got some more relief. I was dope sick. Put this little piece of foil with some heroin on it, and I suddenly felt better. Right. It felt great, actually.
Yeah.
And it continued to, from then on, I'd been addicted to opiates in one form or another.
Okay.
And shortly after that, I got my kid's mom pregnant, and you think that would change change somebody's life, like, and it doesn't.
We always have like this misconception when we're getting loaded.
Yeah.
They're like, if I just had this job, or if I just had this car, or if I just had, this girlfriend, and those are one of those things, right? Maybe if I had a kid,
Yeah.
right, it'll change everything.
Yeah.
But nothing changes, bro.
No, I heard a good saying, and it says the only thing stronger than a mother's love is addiction.
Fuck.
And it's so true.
Ah, man.
I mean,
That's so heartbreaking, but it's so true.
yeah.
And when you're in
And a
that.
father's love, same.
Yeah, for sure.
A mother's love, they say that, it's stronger because they were one at one point, and, but it's the truth, man.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do better, and I wanted to provide a life
Yep.
for my child, but my addiction was stronger.
Yep.
And so, I'd like to say it changed something, but it didn't. I ended up in jail for the majority of her pregnancy, and I get out, and by the time that my first daughter is born, I'm already loaded.
Right.
I remember being at Ontario Kaiser and sneaking out to the car time and time again, like waiting for her to have the baby. And I would end up like coming off a nod, like in the car, and checking my phone to make sure I didn't miss it, Right. And then I remember I have a picture of me holding Sophia, and I'm loaded, super loaded. I remember like I was so loaded, like their grandmother was worried I was gonna drop her because I kept nodding while holding my child.
Right.
And it's crazy to think back on those things, but I mean, that's just how strong addiction is. It takes a hold of you. Like every part of you, every fiber of your being is like in this grip of addiction,
And it makes you, because we share a lot of the same experiences, right?
Yeah.
And when I was loaded, man, it made me feel like, man, do I not love my kids? Do I not care about my kids? Right? Even though I did everything in my power to convince myself that I loved them and that I cared about them, but and what I understand today, man, it's never a lack of love for other people, and it's always a lack of love for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, and it's powerful, bro, because it takes you to those fucking depths of hell that we can't escape, bro.
How long did it take you to realize that?
To realize what?
That it was a lack of love for yourself and not a lack of love for your children.
Because
that doesn't just,
No, that doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
No. One of the hardest realizations was I shared at a meeting. I don't know if I shared this on the last podcast, but I shared at a meeting where, like, I just lost one of my kids while I was in treatment with one of them, right? And I shared about how, like, my kids were the most important thing to me, and I love them more than anything in this world. And this dude stood up after me and shared, and he said, "You don't fucking love your kids. You love getting loaded more than you love your kids, because if you did it, you wouldn't put them in that situation," right? Yeah. And I was in treatment, bro, and in my head, I'm like, bro, you don't know who I am and what I'm capable of, right?
Yeah.
And he was kind of big, so I'm already looking for rocks outside the meeting, like, I'll hit this fool, right? I did it.
Yeah.
But I went home, man, and I laid on my bunk bed, right, in treatment, and I broke down, bro, and I was like, man, I love getting high more than I love my kids, bro, right? And that still rings true for me today.
Yeah.
And that's why recovery is so important, that we keep working at it and keep moving forward. Like, no matter how much time I got, how many steps I work, how many sponsors I have, like, I have to keep striving, because I know the moment that I pick up and get loaded, nothing else matters, bro.
Nothing.
And so a lot of my revelations were in treatment, but none of them really sunk in, right?
Yeah.
So one of my counselors told me, they asked me if I loved myself. And I was like, yeah, of course I love myself, right? And she's like, no, like, do you love yourself?
Yeah.
Right? And what she was getting at is that people who love themselves don't shove needles in their arm, bro. People who love themselves don't drink themselves to death. People who love themselves don't get loaded until they become someone that is unrecognizable, right?
Yeah.
And so those moments, like they talk about in the rooms, right, that a seed gets planted, right? So those seeds were planted, And when I got clean this time and I started going through my steps is when I really got a grasp and an understanding of that. Yeah. So the seeds were planted a long time ago, even through all my addiction, in and out of treatment. But it wasn't until I started watering that plant, which for me was getting busy with step work and literature work and sponsorship and so forth and so forth.
Yeah, and I think that's one of our goals for this podcast.
Yes.
Is maybe somebody's listened to it and they're loaded.
All right.
But it plants a seed.
Yeah.
They might not get clean today. Might be 2 years from now, but if something that we share gives them a little bit of hope.
Absolutely.
And they remember it later, and it was worth it,
Mm-hmm.
So where was I at?
So now you're doing heroin. Your daughter was born.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Continue to do heroin. Shortly.
So was the mother of your children using at this time? Or were you guys like druggy buddies? Were you guys getting low together?
Yeah, definitely
Okay.
were. That was why our relationship started. Sure.
Yeah.
It was it was a place for me to hang out and get loaded without anybody bugging me. And we both like to get loaded, and we enjoyed getting loaded together. That's really how it was. So shortly after Sophia was born, we were getting loaded. I don't remember if she was getting loaded when she had her, but we were getting loaded, and we were trying to get clean. We had got a little scared from DCFS, but they weren't all the way in the mix yet.
Yeah,
So we were trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think we were both going to the methadone clinic, trying to get straight, half-assed straight. And I remember I'm at the house with our 3-month-old baby, and she leaves to go to the methadone clinic. And I'm wondering, she left, and I hadn't heard from her. I tried calling her, and for some reason, I go and check on the CHP incident reports. I'm wigged out at the time.
Right.
There's no other train of thought that would make sense other than that. So I find on there that about 40 minutes after she left, there was a rollover accident,
Oh, wow.
3 miles down the freeway, with a similar vehicle description.
Oh, shoot.
And it was her.
Wow.
She had nodded off, hit the guardrail, traveled all the way across all 4 lanes, and then rolled down an embankment.
Wow.
Yeah, so and it ended up being her. She's lucky to be alive today, honestly. She had a bunch of injuries, broke her back,
Wow.
broke her arm. She really got pretty messed up. And God was there because she was launched out of the vehicle and didn't have any head injury whatsoever.
Wow.
So that's one of the reasons I know God's real.
Yeah.
I had a big problem with God for a lot of years, and it was all a delusion of mine, all thinking I had been dealt a bad hand in life, and
Yeah.
so she ended up, she was in the hospital for a couple months over that, and she got out and she was on some heavy pain meds, and also in the course of that, I remember I thought that it was crucial for the medical staff to know that she had just had a baby.
Yeah.
And they spun that and said, oh, she has a brand new baby. And when she got in here, she tested positive. So that opened up the DCFS case
Gotcha.
full-fledged
Right.
at that point. And so at that point, while she's recovering, she's getting a bunch of good pain meds, and we're doing them, and in every which way that you're not supposed to be doing them. And and we're in her parents' house, and they start coming to the house, start checking on things, and they said, you guys can get some help, and your daughter can stay here, but and we're gonna keep tabs on you, but if you're not doing good, you have to leave, and she has to stay.
Right.
So that was the first time I went to treatment.
How old were you then?
I would have been 26.
Okay, so 26, and you're 34 now, right?
33.
33. Try to give you extra year, bro. So, okay, so this is when you're 26, right?
Yeah.
About what, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
So I go to treatment for the first time, and I had to go for 90 days. That's what they suggested, and I remember thinking to myself, like, 90 days is a long time, dude.
Right.
But it really is such a short amount of time to try and change the rest of your life.
Right.
And I was, I always did well when I had authority hanging over me, when I had a probation officer, like, breathing down my neck, or I had a DCFS officer or agent or whatever you call them breathing down my neck. I could follow directions.
Right.
And I can get them off my back, and I can make it look good even, But as soon as that accountability's gone, I had never even attempted to work a program of recovery. I would go to meetings. I would go to treatment, and I would, I'd enjoy myself doing it. I liked the fact that I didn't have to use drugs every day. I liked the freedom that brought, but I didn't do any work on the inside.
Right.
So I got out of treatment. I think we almost closed that case, and we started using again.
Okay.
And about that time, we had another child. And so I had to go back. I went back again to the same treatment center, and it was a couple years later, or a year and a half later maybe, and I went and tried it again. I had 2 kids, and I went there for 90 days again. Actually, I didn't even finish that time. I got myself in trouble. We talked about this.
Yeah.
So at that time, we had worked it out where my kid's mom was in one treatment center. I was in another. I don't exactly know why, because we had the option to go to the same treatment center, but she wanted to go to another one. So we're at different treatment centers, and we worked it out to where I have one kid, she has the other, and we switch.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I have a child, my daughter, one of them at a time, in the treatment center with me.
Right.
And so the way this treatment center was set up, you got men on one side and women on the other side. And when the men need to go to the group, they take their children over to the nursery, which was ran by the women clients. So, I was very sick still. I thinking I hadn't worked any kind of steps or any kind of program or even gotten a sponsor at this point. So, my mind tells me, like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. Like, every time I'd go drop my daughter off, there was a different female client working the nursery. So over the course of like 2 weeks, I met just about every female over there.
Right.
And at that point we had, I saw something that caught my eye, and I started, communicating with her, and we started sneaking out and going to the hospital and like, hooking up in the hospital, and like, it was crazy, but like, so it ended up, we were sneaking out one time, and she had to go with her roommate somewhere, and I grabbed some new guy to take with me somewhere, and we ended up hopping on a train and going all the way to LA.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I thought this was going to work, but I was gone from this facility with this other guy for like 13 hours.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I came back like hours after curfew, and I ultimately got kicked out for that.
Okay.
So at this point, every time I was doing well, I would get in contact with my family again. My mom is a recovering addict, so I always stayed far away from her when I was using, because I knew she would know right away, and I didn't want to deal with the confrontation or the shame that came with having to face that. So every time I did good, like, my mom was always right there, willing to help me. And so I had gotten kicked out, and like, my mom loves me so much, like, she was even like with me on like, F that place, and like, they're out to get you, and like, she totally like backed me up on it, co-signed it to the fullest. So I got out of there, and I started working again. Started working right away. I was staying with her for a little bit, and still early on in this relationship with this new girl, and
Okay.
you know, she had obligations by parole to stay there. So she stayed there, and I started, you know, doing the manly thing, I thought, and like getting us a place and all this stuff, and still working no program, you know.
Are you still going to meetings at this time?
Up until she got out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, nothing better to do.
Yeah, nothing better.
Working, going to meetings, you know, getting the court card signed or whatever, and like, as soon as she got out, like, it all went out the window. You know, I hung on for a little bit. I was able to like hold my job for a little bit, and you know, it got away from me.
Okay.
You know, I started using little by little, and ultimately got fired from that job. You know,
Right.
and right about that time, she got pregnant. So I got 2 young daughters with my first kid's mom, and she, you know, she was kind of in and out trying to do the program. She'd try to get clean and go back out. And I was doing the same thing. You know, I would try to get clean, and then I'd go back out. And I found myself in a relationship with another woman, another drug-fueled relationship, and with another baby on the way. And, you know, just like clockwork, like it seemed like every time that happened to me in the past, as soon as I'd be going like super hard in my addiction, doing whatever crime, whatever manipulation, whatever lying, cheating, stealing I had to do to supply my habit. And, you know, at the end of it, it's always jail for me.
Right.
So right about the time she got pregnant, you know, I had lost the apartment. I wasn't working anymore. Started losing stuff, like it always happens. And I ended up getting busted.
Okay.
And going to jail for. I ended up getting out 2 weeks before she had our daughter. And I got out, and I wanted to do good, and you know, right away it was the same situation. DCFS got involved right out the gate, and you know, we tried to hold it together. We tried to, you know, as best we could, being strung out, you know, but it didn't work. You know, and I quickly, the addiction took hold of me like even stronger than before. I mean, every time I got out from jail, every time I got out of treatment, and I picked it back up, it was like I'd never left.
Right.
And it just got stronger and stronger and stronger.
What's the longest time you ever done in jail?
A year.
A year?
Yeah. An actual year.
Actual full year.
So 2.5, yeah.
Okay, 2.5.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And, you know, it's like, it's crazy. Like, I started, the first time I went to jail, I got a DUI at 18. And after you go a few times, it's like, and you start running into people, and they recognize you, and they welcome you. It starts to, like, not be that bad. You know, I was on a panel last night, and I seen, like, 4 different dudes that I was in jail with.
Right.
And they're like 1 day, 5 days clean at the Salvation Army. And I mean, I'm glad to run into them there.
Yeah.
It was a blessing for sure. And
you know what's funny, bro? It's like when you show up, right?
yeah.
They like whatever cards you're a part of, they like make your bed. They put, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
They do all that stuff,
yeah.
right? And I talk to, you know, the people I work with, and I'm like, bro, like we should be welcoming each other, bro. Because like when you go to jail, they welcome you, bro. What do you need? You need some soap?
Yeah.
You need this? Here, hold this for now. You know what I'm saying? When you have it, you can pay it back, or this is just like just a little, you know, just a little a little ride package, a little care package, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny, bro, that we could treat each other so well in an environment like that, and then, you know what I'm saying? So it's like in recovery, we need to be treating each other like that, bro. We need to be taking care of people, you know?
And, you know, like it started to be for me, you know, every time I got busted, I was wore out. And it was relief. Like, it was like the fight's over.
I know.
I could finally like
Get some sleep.
just get some sleep and just like
72-hour grace period.
Yeah, all that. It's crazy, like, and I try to be like that in the rooms, you know. And I get excited when I see somebody that comes in, like people look when they're first time in jail and like don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You see that same look in the meetings when they get there and they don't know what's going on, and they're scared and intimidated, and like, you know, I get excited when that happens.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
because I feel completely comfortable. I feel at home in the rooms. You know, and if there's a meeting I don't get that feeling from, I don't go there.
Yeah. You know, for me, I'm an uncomfortable person. So when I go to an outside meeting, like sometimes I feel uncomfortable, especially if I see like gang members or like all that stuff. I'm like, oh, look at all these tough guys, right? And I'll sit in a meeting, I'll be uncomfortable. Like I'm not going to share. I'm not going to say nothing. You know, then I see like one of the toughest guys that I see in there, right? That look tough to me. And then like he shares and he gets emotional, he gets vulnerable. And I'm like, I'm at home. Like but I do that every time. It takes me a while to like kind of seek into my seat and realize like, it doesn't matter what we look like, what kind of life we come from, right? What did it say? Park place or park bench, you know what I'm saying? Like, once people start opening up their mouth, I feel at home. I'm like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, you know?
Yeah. And it's so funny that it's like the opposite. Because in jail or prison, like, that does matter. What you look like.
Oh, it does.
You know what I mean? And then we come to a place where it's like it's a room filled with love, you know, and it doesn't matter what you look like.
No.
And it takes a while to get used to that because we're wired to believe otherwise. And we're wired to like not feel love and make ourselves vulnerable enough to receive a little bit of love, you know. We're so used to like the streets and just like negative feelings and hate and thievery, and you know, everyone's out to get each other. Like as soon as you fall asleep, like and it's the complete opposite. It's like night and day, but it is very uncomfortable.
In the beginning,
you're not used to it for sure.
And like, for example, if I would have seen someone like you in early recovery, I'm like, oh, he's definitely not me. He definitely doesn't come from where I come from. He definitely hasn't experienced what I've experienced. He don't know what it is, right? And then we get to know each other, and you start going to a lot of meetings, and then it's like you realize, man, that the disease of addiction doesn't have a stronghold on a certain race, a certain economic background, or, you know, it doesn't have any of that, right? Because those are one of those things too. I thought, man, like if I was raised with a silver spoon instead of a plastic spoon, like things would have been different. But you meet people who were raised with a silver spoon and their life still turned out the same fucking way as mine did, bro. You know, at the end, or worse, because they got a little bit of cushion to, you know what I'm saying, to have all that excess. But anyway, so it's like, it takes a while to get used to and to get comfortable going to meetings because it's so foreign, and we're not used to that kind of love. Right? We're used to like, let me show you some love, let me hook you up.
Oh, yeah.
Let me show you some love. I got a lick over here. Let me show you some love. I know, like, I'll introduce you to my connect. Let me show you some, you know what I'm saying? Let me show you some love. Let's go beat this fool's ass, or what, you know, and so forth and so forth. And so
it's
the love we
backwards. So backwards.
I know, bro. And you don't realize how sick it is until you get clean and you work work a program, and then you get to a point where like I've been looking at this the whole, like, completely wrong my whole life.
Yeah, bro. There's some sick things that we're even able to laugh about, bro. Sick. And that's awesome. Awesome to be able to talk about those things. So at the end of that, you know, that was the beginning of my last run. I had completely given up on trying to work towards being in my youngest daughter's life. I completely given up on it, and I felt defeated. You know, I had already been out of my children's life, going to jail, using and running and gunning. That you know, when it happened again, I just, you know, all I wanted to do was numb the emotions that came with that, you know, and I did it at all costs, in excess, as much as I could use, I used, you know, and I went on like that for 3 years, almost, you know, and about a year after that happened, the COVID started, and you know, I was into some things that. When COVID happened, you know, I was in financially, like I had a stream of income that allowed me to use like I wanted to use consistently. So it got real bad real fast, you know. I had believed this lie that I had like acquired some things when it was all ill-gotten. You know, I had gotten into a relationship. I had, and we were both into the same things pretty much. I was heavily into the fentanyl at that point. She wasn't though, and I thought in my mind that I had figured it out.
Yeah.
Like this time, I'm gonna get into a relationship with a woman that doesn't do the same drugs as me.
Right.
Some of it was I didn't want to share, but the other part of it was I thought I had figured out the formula to have a successful relationship on drugs, you know? Like if our drug of choice is different, like we're going to work. You know? And, you know, the things that we did for money were similar. We had it, you know, being in our addiction, like the way that we did that, like we made a perfect team.
Right.
You know, so I thought I had figured it all out. And, you know, my fentanyl addiction just kept getting worse. And, you know, that went on for a couple years and it was turbulent, you know, at times. And then her brother ended up going to Salvation Army. Okay. And he was there like 4 months. And he ended up getting out, and within 24 hours of him getting out, he had gotten out, or he was kicked out because he got loaded. And the Salvation Army has a zero tolerance for that. And, you know, he didn't, you know, I know that's painful to have to deal with that. Those emotions that come with, like, I was doing so good and I made one mistake and, like, now I'm out on the streets.
Yeah.
And I feel like he was just in an attempt to like cope with those emotions. He wanted to get loaded, you know. And this was out in Hollywood, and he went out and found some fentanyl, and he took one hit, and he died. So I was in this I'm still in this relationship, actually. And she, that was her big brother, and she was devastated. And I even as strung out as I was, like I knew I couldn't continue to use fentanyl when her big brother had just overdosed and died from it.
Right.
You know, so, you know, I figured out a way where I could kick it, and I just traded one for another. You know, speed has always been a background thing for me. Like if it's there, I'm doing it. If it's not, I don't really care. But I always did it because it was pretty much always there.
Yeah.
You know, so I started doing the wax pens heavily. You know, I needed something to bring me down.
Right.
So I did those, like, I was cracked out on them, on wax pens. But I was off the fentanyl, and I thought I was doing something.
Yeah.
My life didn't change at all. It didn't get any better. I was just, like, awake for the whole thing, you know,
Right.
instead of nodded out. Yeah. So it kind of sucked more. In my opinion.
You weren't just looking at your shoes.
Yeah. I wasn't drooling all over myself. But, you know, and I was able to do that for about a month and a half, and then, you know, we started having like some, you know, she was going through the loss of her brother.
Uh-huh.
I was going through, you know, losing everything because I couldn't hold on to anything. Everything I had gotten, you know, over the course of like getting the EDD and everything, like, I started to lose.
Right.
And I started to lose her. You know, she was dealing with the loss of her brother and not able to grieve properly because she was still getting loaded. And, you know, at one point we kind of decided like that we were broken up, and then I didn't have any reason to quit using fentanyl anymore.
Right.
So I had a healthy respect for it, so I took it really slow at the beginning, but like, so for 2 weeks I was able to do it without overdosing. And then one day I just overdosed and I had to be brought back with Narcan, you know. And then
So what happened? Were you like in a restroom? Were you at a dope spot? Were you at a family member's house?
I was in a garage
Okay.
with a friend
A
of mine.
spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And somebody I had used with for years. Somebody I had done time with. And I just took too big of a hit, man. This stuff is so powerful. Yeah. And I had such a low tolerance. Like, I had it in my head. I had been on a 3-year run of this stuff, and I did ungodly amounts, you know, before I had quit for a little while. And, you know, I had a healthy respect for it because, you know, through the course of you doing opiates, it starts to become a normal thing. Like, when the phone rings and somebody died, like, it's terrible to think about, but it's almost a part of the game.
Yep.
You know, and so I took it easy for a little while, and then I ended up overdosing, and luckily I wasn't alone, and luckily he had Narcan on him.
Right.
And I came back, and I had never seen this dude cry, and he was crying right in front of me, and all I wanted was another hit, and I manipulated him and convinced him to give me another one. And a few days later, I was in an apartment with another friend of mine, and I felt fine, and then I took one more hit, and I actually collapsed onto my own leg and broke my own leg under my own body weight. And he had to run like across the apartments to some other chick's house and get some Narcan, and he brought me back.
Wow. And
you know, I had a broken leg. I continued to walk on it. I knew I was about to get sick when my leg started hurting again, so I needed to take another couple hits. And, you know, through the course of that situation and a near overdose one more time after that. Like, I didn't have to be Narcan, but I was out. You know, I was able to, they slapped me around and I came back, and, you know, through those 3 situations, like, I wasn't really welcomed anywhere anymore. And so this behavior that I had developed of wanting love and wanting acceptance and using drugs to get it, or using drugs and women to get it, or it didn't work anymore.
Right.
I wasn't welcome anywhere. Nobody wanted me around. And I had stopped loving myself, if I had ever, a long, long time ago. So, you know, I had lost everything that I thought I had earned or like gained through the course of that last run. And I didn't have anybody to blame but myself finally. You know, every other time I got busted, every time I got a DCFS case, every time I went to treatment, like, I always had somebody that I blamed besides myself. You know, I got to the point where I had lost it all, and I was not welcome anywhere that had the drugs I wanted to do anymore, you know. And luckily, you know, I'd had some DCFS cases, and I had been in some meetings, and I had experienced a little bit of what recovery was, and I knew where to go.
Right.
You know, every time I had been in treatment, I was heavily addicted to opiates, so it's not like you just sleep it off.
Right.
So I knew, as deep in as I was, I had to go somewhere to deal with it. So I ended up, my mom and my dad, who had just recently got clean, came and picked me up at that trap house and took me to treatment. You know, and when I got there, I remember for the first 2 weeks, like, I couldn't hardly talk because I was crying the whole time. And it just the reality had set in, the fact that I hadn't talked to my children, I hadn't talked to my family, my mom, since I couldn't remember the last time. You know, and the reality of all that kind of just
fucked you
came
up.
down. Like, I'd been numbing it for so long. Like, while I'm using, I think of it momentarily, and as soon as the thought comes, like, that's when I need to hit it. That's when I need to hit.
Right.
Or 5. You know, anything to take it away. You know, so all that kind of flooded back in, and then the realization came to me that, like, there had been people that I used with that used the same drugs out of the same bag that were no longer alive. And I realized right then, you know, like, that there's something greater than me that kept me safe through that, you know.
And, you know, it's like when you see people come get clean and they can't talk because they're going to cry, right? And then when they do cry and they do share and they share how fucked up their life is, it's a little fucked up, but you're like, good.
Get it out.
Good. And I just have it like, I hope it was horrible.
Yeah.
I hope you feel so crappy right now, right? That you want to do something different this time around.
Yeah.
You know? All right. So you're in treatment?
Yeah. So I'm in a treatment center out in the Palm Springs, and I'm loving it, dude. As soon as I can stop crying, and as soon as right away I ask for some recovery material. I asked for a Bible, which I don't even know where that came from, but I asked for one and I got one, and it was crazy. Like, the guy I asked just so happened to like put one in his bag on his way out the door that morning, and then later on after he's at work, he's like, actually, I put one in my bag on my way to work today. I don't know why, but here you go.
Yeah.
You know, and like little things just started happening like that. And, you know, I was still talking to my girl at the time, and she was still out there, and she kind of was kicking around the idea of going to treatment, but she hadn't gotten bad enough yet, in my opinion. And so I go to another treatment center in Orange County, and she happens to be right down the road, you know. And she shows up at the treatment center right when I get there, and you know, we go hang out, and I end up getting loaded one more time. And it wasn't on my drug of choice; it was on speed, and it wasn't like 4 hours later I was in the back of a cop car, and going to jail for some old warrants that I hadn't dealt with yet, you know. And that was God too, in my opinion. You know, because as soon as I got that one in me, I knew what I wanted next, and I was going to get it. There was no stopping me. I wasn't going back to the treatment center. I didn't know how I was going to get it, but that was the next step. You know, I wanted opiates in my system as soon as I could.
Right.
You know? So I ended up in jail, and I ended up going before the judge and then telling him I'm in a treatment center. And this guy was not listening to anybody's sob story that day. And for some reason, when I got up there, he listened to me, and he said, okay, I'm going to let you out, but you need to come back to this courtroom within 7 days with proof that you're there, and I'll let you out. But if you don't, I'm coming for you. So I got out, I called the house manager, and he came and picked me up, and I went right back to the house, you know, and I had used, but I had been in jail a couple days.
Yeah.
So of course, getting out of jail, you're gonna get tested, and he kind of knew I did, but it was like a maybe.
Yeah.
You know, so he's like, I'm gonna write it as negative, but you know, get your shit together. You know, so because I had thought I fooled him, I continued to fool myself, and I just acted like I never did it.
Right.
You know? So I was claiming a whole 20 days that I didn't have for almost 6 months. And I lived with that, and it bothered me every single day. So I stayed in that treatment center for about 60 days. And I get out, and I'm so blessed to have like had the mom that I have, because I wouldn't go around her because she would know if I was loaded.
Right.
So as soon as I got out this time, as soon as I got out of treatment, I threw myself right into whatever suggestions my mom had for me, people that live and work this program had for me, and I just did what they said. You know, I went to like 180 and 180. You know, I didn't waste any time getting a sponsor. I got some service commitments, and I just started doing the work right away. And you know, after I got out of that treatment center, I went right back to work. 2 days later, I started working for my mom. I started going to meetings regularly with my dad, who was new in recovery at the time, and I just kept myself busy with work and reconnecting with my children and all the things that are important for an adult father to be doing.
Right.
You know. So I've slowly built like a really good relationship with my daughters. I have an excellent relationship with my mom. I'm building a relationship with my father at this time, and you know, I'm just doing it how I'm taking suggestions. You know, I've tried doing it my way. I've tried tweaking the plan. I've tried to like kind of do it. I've tried to like take half the suggestions, and it never worked.
So what's your clean date? Your official clean date, right? So you end up feeling guilty.
Yeah.
Because you had 20 months or 20 days added onto your official clean date. So what is your official clean date now?
And I came clean like 20-something days after my 6-month chip. So I took a dirty 6-month chip.
And then you took a real 6-month chip.
And then I cleaned it up so I didn't have to get rid of it. I waited long enough. So by the time I came clean, I still had 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Still manipulate to your favor,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're able to take 2 6-month chip, right?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I just kept the one I had.
Okay.
I didn't want to give it back. And, you know, and I didn't want to have to take another one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way I turned it.
All right.
So my clean date's 9/28 of 22.
Okay.
And
So you got a little over a year.
that was the last time I used. And
All right.
that was the last time I was in a cop car, and that was the last time I went to jail.
All right.
So I got 14 and a half months almost
All right. That's
Clean.
awesome, bro.
from all mood and mind altering substances, and it is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's really it's a miracle.
All right.
You know, it's a miracle I'm here and that others aren't. You know, I heard something on a speaker tape, and it hit me hard. I shared it with you. You know, this guy, he was getting ready to share, and he said, I want to take a moment of silence. And he took a long moment, too,
Yeah.
which I like, too. And he said, I want to take a moment of silence for all the addicts that are going to die today. And man, that hit me, because that's the truth.
Yeah.
The truth hurts.
It
And for
chokes
some
me up,
reason,
bro.
I'm here and I'm clean.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. But today I do everything I possibly can to make sure that doesn't change. You know, I don't go around any old people, any old places. I don't put myself in those sticky situations. I stay in constant contact with the God of my understanding.
Yeah.
Every morning and every night and through the day, every day.
Right.
You know, and I stay in contact with somebody else who's in recovery, another recovering addict that's like me. That, and I realized coming to the rooms and coming and throwing myself into a program of recovery is like, this is like the love that I always look for.
Right.
It's the love I always wanted. It's the sense of being a part of something that I always used drugs to try and fill, and it never worked.
Right.
You know, and I tell you all the time, this is the lick right here.
Yeah.
For somebody like me that's been through what I've been through, and somebody like you who's been through what you've been through, like there's no other way, bro.
No.
There just isn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I got here, man. And,
That's freaking
I'm
awesome.
so grateful, man. And saying it out loud makes me even more grateful.
Right.
So I just reminded myself that I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
It's a miracle that I'm here, and I need to be grateful for that. And yeah, you know what else I learned? Grateful people live longer.
Yeah. It's
amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we close out the podcast, right? What do you feel has been the most impactful in your recovery?
That's a good question.
There's a lot of things we do, right?
There is, and I think just being able to be humble
Okay.
and to not be selfish, and to get to a point where it's like it's natural to think of others before myself. Not in, of course, not always.
Yeah.
You have to think of yourself and you have to think about what's best for you. But when you're good and you're solid in your recovery, and like you can really put your wants aside and like go out of your way to help somebody,
Right.
that's like the best feeling. Like I do an H&I and like last night I talked to like 40 dudes
Yeah.
that are like fresh, bro.
Yeah.
They're like one guy had one day,
Yeah.
and they got no more than like 30, you know, and all these guys, and like just one of them or two of them coming up to me and saying, hey, that really helped me today. They probably forgot all about it today, but yesterday it helped them. And that's an amazing feeling for me, man, because it was somebody did that for me.
Yeah. And you're doing another panel on Thursday.
Yeah.
Right? So freely given, what was freely given to you, bro?
Yeah, bro. I shared with you, this gift of recovery. I love this. Mm-hmm. This gift of recovery.
Me too, bro.
Comes with an obligation to share it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I see a lot of people not sharing it, when they could, and they have it to share.
Yeah.
And I'm not anybody to judge. I only got, a little bit of time, but
That's a lot of time, bro.
It is a big deal.
It is.
It's a big deal, but staying grateful puts me in a position where I want to give it back. If you're not grateful for it, then you're, I don't know, doing something wrong. But
I think for me, bro, I've been suffering in silence for too long, and I refuse to recover in silence, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to recover out loud.
Yeah.
Let everybody know, and that's the premise of this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It's not just recovery based, but I mean, the majority of it is going to be, and it's like, we don't have to live that way. We don't have to die that way. There is hope. There is,
there's a way out.
There's a way out, bro. And you're a perfect example, right? 3 overdoses, multiple relapses. I mean, and you're here.
Yeah.
Right? You found a new way to live.
Yeah.
And man, it doesn't get any better than that, bro. That's the hope for today, bro.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well.
Yeah. Thanks,
you,
Mike.
Adam.
Appreciate you. Love you, bro.
Love you too, brother.
And we'll see you guys next week.
All right. It's a wrap.
I can storm through any weather. Addiction was the hardest battle I ever endeavored. It takes a lot of effort to apply all of this pressure. Being higher than propellers only drove me through the shredder. I need some hope right now. Can you spare some hope right now? I can use some hope right now. Can you spare some hope right now? Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through.